In the Wild West world of podcasting, there is one podcast that is authentic and genuine and continues to stand tall in its originality. Based on a passion for his guests, their work, and his love of podcasting, Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast get amazing, diverse, unique guests found nowhere else. The variety and quality are endless. There is something for everyone. Derek Thomas is the hero you deserve. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector. Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
Superman 2. The adventure continues with the three villains from Krypton. Each one with the same powers as Superman. Each one dedicated to violence against mankind.
Think of it. 3 supervillains. Or 4 if you count him twice.
The adventure continues in Paris with Lois Lane.
I believe this is your floor.
And the romance continues. The adventure continues in Washington. The world is on the brink of destruction.
Superman, can you hear me?
And Metropolis is in ruins.
Superman, help us!
Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Superman!
General, would you care to step outside?
Revenge.
Revenge!
Revenge!
Now we're cooking, huh?
The big one's just as strong as Superman.
If you've only seen the first part, you haven't seen the best part. The adventure continues in Superman 2.
My next guest filmography includes Superman, Superman 2, King Kong, Farewell My Lovely, March or Die. He is absolute idol for me. Welcome, Jack O Halloran. Jack, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
So, Jack, I don't know where we go. I mean, I feel like you've had 2 lives, right? You got this great boxing career, and then you get this wonderful acting career, and you can throw on top of that an author. You're kind of, no pun intended, you are a jack of all trades. You've done a lot in your life.
1 or 2 things.
I'd say a couple. So you're born in Philadelphia, raised in New Jersey. You're a fighter from 60s to 74 in that ballpark. Start off 16-0. Why boxing, Jack? Are you one of those people that use boxing to get away from choices that might not have been beneficial to your life?
I'll tell you, I played football. Football was my sport, and I was going into to play pro ball, and it was at an era when I was in the 60s. You had to be graduate from your college before you could play football professionally.
Yeah,
they should have that today still, but in those days you had to be a graduate of college because you were older and more mature physically.
Mm-hmm.
So I left school early, and of course I was picked up by the Jets, and they put me on a farm team. There was a team in Philadelphia called the Tinicum,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of us, Dick Christie and his brother, and a lot of guys that were waiting for eligibility to play, we were playing in this league. We were playing like 2 games a week to keep our levels up and stuff. And when it came time to play, Philadelphia had a lot of great ball players down there, and some friends of mine. And I said to Eubank up at the Jets, I said, I think I want to go down and play in Philly. And he said, well, you got a home here, so you do, it's your choice, but we would love to have you here. And if it doesn't work out down there, please come back. And I went down, and they hired, in the course of that, they hired a guy named Jerry Wallman had bought the team, and they hired a guy called Joe Kuharich to coach it. And I watched this guy trade a championship football team away. I mean, trade away Sonny Jurgensen, Tommy McDonald, a lot of good linemen and linebackers and running and the defensive backs. And I said, wow, man, this guy in 6 months' time. So Timmy Brown and I were coming out of a meeting one day, and Kuharich walked right by us. And I said, wow, man, do you not talk to people in your team? Some gruffy thing. And I said, you know what? Take this team and shove it. And Timmy said, while you're at it, trade me. So Ali had just won the title, and some friends of mine in Philadelphia, I said to them, I can beat that guy. And they said, that's a great idea. Next thing I know, I wound up in the gymnasium. And I couldn't box amateur because I was already in the professional level of football. And at that time, you couldn't do amateur and professional. You can today, but you couldn't then.
Right.
So I went right into the professional leagues. I sat in the gym for a few months and started my career in Reading, Pennsylvania, and wound up being 16-0. And I went to a doctor for a physical, and he found out that I had a disease called acromegalia, which is a tumor of the pituitary. And he couldn't figure out how I was even fighting. He said, how can you mentally get up, because it causes such depression? And I said, what are you talking about? And then, because that was a day job for me. I was in my father's world during the night. So daytimes I had to have a gig for everybody to make you look like you were a working guy,
Jack, I think that's the same thing that Andre the Giant had. He had acromegalia, I believe, as well.
He did. Yeah, it killed him.
Yeah. And there's different levels of it, right? So some people get it really severe, I feel like, and then
it's a tumor of the pituitary, and what it is that your body normally puts out like 10% growth hormone. Well, mine was putting out 150%.
Jesus.
So, and I just went on boxing, and I just then when I fought Norton in California, and I gave Norton a terrible licking. They stole the decision, but I won the towns. I stayed there.
On a week's notice, you took that fight too, for those listening, right?
5 days, yeah.
Wow.
He called me on the phone one day. Well, we had a problem on the East Coast with the unions, so I had to sit indoors because they were looking to indict a lot of people. So I got in shape. I was in pretty good shape because I was just running every day, and I was training for, about a week or so. And in the gym, I could sneak into a gym, but mostly I never went out till it's nighttime. It was dark. So they called me on the phone. They said, you want to fight Ken Norton? I said, when? They said, next week. I said, send me a ticket. They said, guys, you'll take the fight? I said, send me a ticket.
Wow.
So I went out, and I actually I could have sat on a stool in the 9th round. The end of the 9th round, it was a great fight. It really was a great fight. We were standing in the middle of the ring, toe-to-toe, and they rang the bell 3 times. The crowd was standing on the chairs screaming, and no one could hear the bell ring. And the 3rd time, the referee came and separated us. And I was going back to my corner, and Kenny ran across the ring and hit me behind the head and drove me into the ring post. And the commissioner was sitting right there, and he jumped up in my corner. He said, if you can't continue, you just won the fight on a foul. I said, I'm going to kill this guy. What are you talking about? Not realizing I'm in his hometown, and his people own San Diego. 2 very wealthy guys. And so I won the city over the crowd, but I blew a decision, so I stayed there and tried to get a rematch right there, but he wouldn't have it. So I knocked out a half dozen guys and won the California heavyweight title.
Yeah.
And Ali was signed to fight me before he fought Norton. He was supposed to fight me in San Diego. We put a deal together and everything. And he called me up one day and he said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Norton's people, like I said, were very wealthy, and they went to Chicago with a bunch of money, and Herbert Muhammad made Ali was fighting Norton. That was it.
Yeah, and just for those listening, you are a very legitimate, as you say, boxer. Ken Norton, for those listening, if you don't know who he is, George Foreman, you fought. You're in the California Hall of Fame, New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame. Is that
Pennsylvania Hall of Fame?
Pennsylvania, I left that one out. Jack, what about, there's a story you tell, I think it's someone you may have just said, the one about Ali at Deer Lake where you ran into him. Does that ring a bell for you?
We were, Ali and I were good friends, and he was very close to a guy named Gene Kilroy, who was a good friend of mine. And when I was in San Diego and I was just starting, I started knocking people out. He called me on the phone, and he said, you got to do me a favor. And I said, I'll do you a favor, sign a contract to fight me. He said, well, we're getting to that, but you got to do me a favor in front. I said, what favor? He said, you're fighting my brother Rockman, and you got to get him out of boxing because he's embarrassing me. I said, what are you talking about? Rockman Ali's your brother? He said, yeah. And I said, oh, my God, I better go in the gym a couple days. So I knocked him out in the ninth round. He never fought again.
Wow. Wow.
Then they took my license away in California for so-called organized crime, which was a bunch of jab. And I got a call from Michigan. And they said, would you fight Alvin Blue Lewis, who had went 13 rounds with Ali in Ireland, and then he came home and he beat Ernie Terrell and he beat another ranked fighter, and if he beat me, they were going to make another Ali Alvin Blue Lewis fight. So they called me on the phone, the commissioner up there, and he said, would you fight Alvin Blue Lewis? And I said, yeah, when? He said, next week. I said, can I get a license? He said, absolutely. So I said, send me a ticket. So I went up to Michigan, and I beat Blue Lewis to death. I beat him 10 out of 10 rounds. And then I went to Ali's camp and up in Deer Lake, and I said, I think it's time we got it on, son. And he said, yeah, well, I think we probably could work something out. And we went into a locker room, and closed the door, and all the press was up there because he was up training for a fight. And we're kicking the door and punching the door and screaming at each other. They thought we were in there fighting, right? They thought we were killing each other. We came back out, and he's laughing like hell. And the shocked look on their faces was great. Yeah. So I said to him, listen, man, I said, let's seriously talk about getting a fight on. He said, let me ask you a question. He said, if I give you a title fight, are you really going to try to beat me? I said, I'll tell you what. For the very first time in my career, I will go away to camp like you do. And I'll spend 8 weeks getting ready for the fight. And when you come in that ring, bring a gun with you because you're going to need it, son.
That's great.
And he looked at me and he looked at the guy, the cook. He said, 2 steaks, please. He was such a great guy. I mean, I loved Ali. Ali was he was a terrific individual.
Yeah, I have 2 last boxing questions for you. The first of which is, what's your opinion on boxing today, right, Jack? Because I feel like boxing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s even the heavyweight division was pretty good. I feel like now it's almost non-existent. It's they Tyson Fury.
The difference is, I fought one time. I mean, I had so many fights in a 10-year period. I mean, I fought like 6 times a year, 7 times a year, and these guys fight once a year.
If that.
It's like when I retired from boxing and I was in the gym training, and this young man, I watched this kid training, and I said, wow, it was at the Goosen gym, the Goosen brothers. And I said, who is that kid? Frankie Lyles. He's from Detroit. They just sent him from Detroit out to us because he's a southpaw and he's boring and, blah, blah, blah. So I watched the kid and I took him a step aside and I set him down. I said, I'll tell you what, son, this is who I am. He said, oh, I know who you are. I said, if you listen to me for 6 months, I will make you world champion. But you got to do everything I tell you to do. And he said, okay. So I moved him into my house on Mulholland Drive, and I took him out and taught him how to run properly. And I got him in the greatest shape he was ever in his life. And within 3 months' time, we had a world title fight, and he won. We were down in Argentina fighting, and he won the super middleweight championship of the world.
Mm.
And then he defended, and that created Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach was just coming up as a trainer, and I put him in the corner with me, and the legend of Freddie Roach started.
One of the best of all time, if not the best, right, Jack? Freddie Roach.
Oh yeah, Freddie's a great listener, and we taught each other a lot. And he was, it worked out very well. And Frankie defended the title several times, very well. We went right down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4. We didn't skip anybody.
Mm.
And we fought all over the world, and it gave Freddie a great recognition because he was with an international champion fighting everywhere.
Yeah, yep.
We beat everybody.
And I know you get asked this a lot when it comes to boxing movies, but I feel like, Jack, from the outside looking in, that Cinderella Man is so underrated with James J. Braddock. What's your thoughts on Cinderella Man?
Braddock was a great fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, he reminded me of myself. Braddock had a lot of injuries, and he trained, he was always working on the docks, and so his training was sparse, and he would break his hands. He had bad hands, broke his hands a lot. And then he all of a sudden went into a period where he stayed healthy, and he could fight. Braddock could fight. For a guy his size, he had great movement, and he could box, and he could punch. And he beat Max Baer, and he beat Max Baer straight up, boy.
Mm.
I mean, he beat Baer for the title. And when he fought Joe Louis, and about a year or two later, Louis took his title away from him. But Louis said he was the bravest guy he ever got in a ring with.
Mm. Yeah,
this guy was an amazing fighter, which Braddock was. And I thought the movie, I thought Russell did a great job, actually.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
And I liked the movie quite a bit because it told the story of a guy, how he actually did live in poverty and how he brought himself up. And, because I remember those days when I would only train 2 or 3 days for a fight, Yeah, and have a lot of other things and worrying about life itself. Yeah, so you retire in 1974. You bounce a little bit, and then you run into, which is a great story, Steve McQueen, right? And that's kind of the bridge, Jack, for your. Well, I actually met McQueen in 67. I think I went from Philadelphia. They sent me up to Boston because I got into a rhubarb in Philly. I was undefeated, and we were working as bouncers in a club. And there was a rhubarb that happened, and I went outside with a few people, and a couple of people got hurt very bad. So rather than face any problems, they put me on a train and sent me to Boston. And so I wound up in Boston, which was great. I love Boston. And I was training out of Boston, and I was 16. Yeah, I never lost a fight in Massachusetts, actually. It was... We had a good time up there. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I live in Massachusetts, Jack.
Well, I love Boston.
Yeah,
Boston's great. I lived at Back Bay, Gloucester, Newbury.
Nice.
Right on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And trained at the French Street Gym downtown.
Wow. Yeah, you have roots to Boston, and but is meeting McQueen for you then, Jack? Is that?
Well, what happened was McQueen came to Boston in '66 to do the Thomas Crown Affair. And when he came into town, we watched over him and took care of him. And he came into a club one night, and I used to get up on stage and sing. I was a pretty good singer. And friends of mine owned this club. And McQueen grabbed me afterwards, and he said, "Wow, man," he said, "I want you to come down on the set with Thomas Crown Affair, and I'll put you in the movie. I'll get you your SAG card, and come back to Hollywood. We'll have a ball." And I said, "Nah, man," I said, "I'm undefeated as a heavyweight, and I kind of like this deal, and I think I'm going to get to fight Muhammad Ali." "Oh, no," he said, "no, with boxing. Come out in the movie business. We'll have a good time." And I said, "I think I got to pass." So then I went on with my career. In the 1968, 69, I fought Manuel Ramos, who was ranked 2 in the world in L.A., and I knocked him out. And they came to offer me, thought we were going to get an Ali fight out of it. And they came and offered me the Great White Hope movie, James Earl Jones. And they had it all fixed up. Raymond Patriarca from Rhode Island put it together with Eddie Foy. All I had to do was sign a contract. And the guy said, well, you got to go to Spain for 6 months. And I said, wait a minute. I'm getting ready to fight Muhammad Ali, and you want me to go to Spain for 6 months to do a movie? He said, well, I thought this was all set. All you were going to do was sign a contract. I said, I don't think so. I said, so Eddie Foy was all upset. He said, oh, my God, we're in trouble. Raymond's going to get so angry. I said, don't worry about it. I'll talk to Raymond. Raymond was a very powerful mafia don from Rhode Island and a dear friend. And so I didn't go. And McQueen called me on the phone. He said, what is wrong with you? This Great White Hope was the biggest movie in Hollywood.
It's huge. Yeah, huge.
And I'm coming out of Fox, walking out of Fox, when I turn it down and show you how fast things travel around. Coming out of Fox, and I'm walking down the steps, and James Earl Jones is walking up the steps. And he stopped me, and he said, you're Jack O'Halloran. And I said, you're James Earl Jones. He said, is it true what I just heard about you? And I said, well, I guess it depends on what you heard. He said, you just told Hollywood to take the biggest movie in Hollywood and stick it. I said, well, I guess you could say that. I said, and he said, I got to shake your hand. I never met anybody that did that before. And we became friends. And James Earl Jones was a great guy. And so then McQueen called me on the phone. What is wrong? What do we have to do to get you out of here? He said, you belong out here. What's the matter with you? I said, yeah, it's coming. I said, So then when I retired from boxing because of the acromegalia, I had it fixed up at Mass General, and it was time to let the gloves go. And I was in New Jersey. I owned a couple construction companies, and I get a phone call from my agent when I lived in San Diego. I did a lot of commercials for the Clippers and Royal Crown Coal and a bunch of stuff. And my agent called me on the phone. She said, they want you badly for a movie. I said, what movie? She said, Farewell, My Lovely with Robert Mitchum, and I think you should do it. And I looked around where I was, and I said, maybe it's time I give this a shot. And I said, yeah, okay. So I had to go to New York to meet the director.
Dick Richard, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I went up and saw Dick Richards, and he's, yeah, you're the guy. Oh, my God, you're the guy. And I said, yeah, right, yeah. I said, are you a gay guy or something here, man? You're coming. No, you're the guy. You got to come back. You got to come back to come out to Hollywood. We want to do a screen test and do this and that. Blah, blah, blah. So I went and I did a screen test, and Mitchum said, it's either him or I don't do the movie.
Wow. And you came to regard him as a father figure, right, Jack?
Oh, he was unbelievable.
What did he do, Jack? What was it about him that you loved? Not, that you really admired so much? Because I've heard you say this in a few interviews. How much he meant to you. What was it about him that you liked so much? He
was very real. He was a street guy, And I mean, Robert went through some crazy stuff in his life, but he never tried to teach me how to act. He taught me about the business. And the very first day I'm going to work, I'd only met him once before that at a fight. And the day we're going to work, he arranged for the car to pick him up and then come and pick me up, and we would drive downtown to go to work together. And we had a long drive because he lived in Bel Air and I was in Beverly Hills. And we had to go downtown to 5th and Main because we're doing a period piece, and you had all the older buildings down there. And on the way down, he had me laughing. And, when I came in the hotel, nobody even recognized you in dark glasses, and he used to wear dark windbreaker like he was a good guy. So they called me and said, your car's here. So I come bouncing through the glass doors to come down, and there's Mitchum. And he looked at me, he said, well, this must be Jackie O. And I said, okay. So we get in the car, and he just told me one story on top of the other. We got down to the set, and he said, go over there and get that monkey suit on, and I'll meet you right over here. And that's the first shot I'm ever walking into, right? Never been on a film set before. And we were walking into this bar looking for Velma, and we're standing at the bottom of the steps, and we get together, and he said, did you read that script, kid? I said, read it. Man, I knew your role, Charlotte Rampling's role, Harry Dean Stanton. I knew cover to cover. He said, good, throw it in the trash can. I said, what? He said, don't let me catch you doing what thousands of people do in this town, acting. Just be yourself. He said, this character's a gangster. You've been a gangster all your life. He said, just be you. Just walk down the street like it's you. And that worked very well. You know?
And, you work with Hackman on March or Die and Superman, which you're going to talk about in a moment. Is that a coincidence, or was that something that happened as a result of the March or Die experience?
Well, Hackman and I, they came, when I get done Farewell, My Lovely, I didn't have an agent. I waited for the movie to come out. And then I went to Mitchum's. I was at Mitchum's house every day. We hung out like father and son. And I said to him, well, I guess the movie's doing pretty well. I should get an agent. So he pointed to the phone book. I said, what is that? He said, if you think I'm going to tell you where to go and the guy does the wrong thing for you and you're going to get mad at me, ain't happening. Book's full of agents. So I got this guy, Meyer Mishkin, who was a great agent. And he did Richard Dreyfuss, Lee Marvin. So I called him on the phone. And I said, well, I'm going to sign with Meyer Mishkin. He said, couldn't get a better agent. I said, well, you could have made it a hell of a lot easier and just told me that in the first place. He said, yep, it's a great agent. So I go and I sign with this guy. And he says to me, what do you want to do? What do you want from the film industry? I said, because Farewell was a good movie and it gave me a lot of credit. And I said, I want to be like a Victor McLaglen. I don't want to do just big dumb roles. I want to get into meaty roles. And he said, well, they don't do movies like that anymore. I said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, then I'll redo The Informer. He said, you're not a movie actor 6 months and you're going to be a writer and a producer already? And then they came from London to talk to me about doing the Bond movie. And I had just signed to do March or Die in Spain with Hackman and Deneuve and great cast, Max von Sydow and Marcel Bazoufi. And, oh, God, so Cubby Broccoli and his son came from London, and they tried to talk me into doing the Bond movie. And I really didn't want to do it. I didn't like the script. It was to me, a big guy. And so I was around the corner with Mitchum. It was his birthday, and I was getting him pretty well loaded, talking with it. And I said, I got to go around the corner. These guys are waiting for me. He said, who? I said, Cubby Broccoli and his son. And I got to go around the corner. I got to go see them. He said, what do they want from me? I said, they want me to do that Bond movie. And he said, but you don't like the script. I said, no. He said, tell them to go to hell. So I went around, I met them, and I said, unfortunately, I just signed to do this other, which I could have got out of. I just signed to do this other movie, and it worked out terrific because the crew were all English guys, and they all worked on the Superman movie when we did Superman. So we got a call, Hackman and I got a phone call from Richard Donner, and they flew us up from Spain to meet Donner at the studio in London. And we discussed, they offered me the part of Non.
Wow.
And they asked me, they said, well, you realize that, what do you think about playing a guy that's a deaf, dumb mute? I said, I embrace it. And Donner said, what? I said, Jackie Gleason was a friend of mine, and he won an Oscar for Gigot, playing a deaf, dumb mute. I said, and if I ever got a character role like that, I would embrace it, and Non was a perfect role because Terrence is this vicious general. Sarah's a man-eater. Somebody had to relate to the kids. It was a big child audience. I said, so I'm going to take this big brute of a guy and play him like a child, learning how to work his eyes and, being adjutant to Zod. And Donner said, wow, what a great idea. And I said, yeah, I love the idea. Let's, go for the gusto.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And it worked out very well, actually.
Yeah, I love the three of you. I wish I saw more of you guys. Terrence Stamp and Sarah Douglas. I thought the three of you were one hell of a team. I really wish there was more of you. Let me ask you, Jack. So the foundation of early superhero movies, I mean, Superman is it. Like Superman 1 or 2, take your pick. Every single movie we see today, superhero movie, is based on this movie. This movie is the foundation of all superhero movies. Is that how you see things too?
Yeah. The only difference is that I don't like is that they're getting darker and darker. You're fighting violence with violence all the time. And we in 1 and 2, Superman was locking people up like the all-American way of Law and Order. You know what I mean? He wasn't running around killing people. And he wasn't even trying to kill us. He got our power. He found a way to neutralize our powers. And at the end of the movie, we get carted off to jail, without our powers anymore. So I look at what they're doing today, and everything is so out of proportion. And I said, we did a storyline that we put together, and we want to do another Superman. We're going to use this hologram technology to bring Christopher back and to bring the three villains back and to make them become part of Superman's team. There's a storyline that we have that reverses their thinking process and takes away that villainous and makes them part of Superman's team, because all these villains are coming from different planets now, invading Earth. So now Superman's got his own team, And the script is brilliant, actually, and we'll see if we can get Warner Brothers to do it, and it would work out very well, So I have another project that I'm doing called Gray Cloud, which is about a person who is raised with these powers that reverses violence.
Interesting. Original.
There's nothing out there like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite good. This guy is an American guy, and he gets raised by the Chinese monks, and it's quite an interesting story, actually. And they educate him, and he becomes a bank authority, and he comes into America to turn around all these villainous companies that are doing weaponry and things that are evil.
Yeah.
And he reverses all that. It's kind of clever the way we've got this put together. So I think we're going to get that off the ground. That's going to be quite a neat. I think it'll do very well because it reverses violence.
Absolutely.
Turns it back the other way.
Jack, yeah, and I don't know if you've heard, but the Superman's motto, "Truth, Justice, and the American Way," was just changed to "Truth, Justice, and Better Tomorrow." What are your thoughts about them altering Superman's?
That's what makes me angry, is the fact that Superman was the very first superhero in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
His first superhero, and they're changing it. They changed his costume. Now they're changing, like you're saying, the American way. And they're turning it around, and I think they're making a mistake.
Yeah, Richard Donner, phenomenal director in person, right? When he passed, I feel like, Jack, everyone was legitimately sad because he seemed to be well liked with everybody.
Oh, Dick was incredible. He was a brilliant director. I mean, there'll never be another Christopher Reeve. The way he went from Superman to Clark Kent, and that was Donner. Donner did that because Chris had never done anything before. He did a soap opera and a play where he was holding a spear for somebody important, and he didn't really have any roles of meat. And Donner is the one that created Superman, Clark Kent, and Chris had the look, and they put he was a 170-pound kid when he came on the set.
Wow.
And they put 20-some pounds on him, and it turned out terrific. I mean, there'll never be anybody be better than what Christopher did with Superman, and that's why we want to bring it back in a hologram.
Yeah, and you know,
and hologram technology works brilliantly.
Yeah, and you know, David Prowse, who played Darth Vader, helped getting Reed in that shape.
Oh yeah, David and I talked about it because, you know, I was a great athlete, and I said to him, you don't want to bulk him up because David was a big guy. I said, you don't want to bulk him. You want to make him like Steve Reeves, Mr. America Steve Reeves, who was cut perfectly, definition-wise. I said, and, you know, Chris has got an ego, so he's not going to wear any plates or anything underneath of his costume. So you want to cut his body with definition and add 20 pounds, but do it properly. And he said, you know what, Jack, that's a great idea. And that's what they did, you know.
Yeah.
And it turned out terrific.
Yeah, you know, and Donner's fired, everyone knows this, and, well, not everyone, but in Superman 2, he filmed 70% of the movie.
86%.
Yeah, why was he fired by the Salkinds, and was there a reason for that? And how did the cast react to that, Jack?
I tell you, well, Hackman never came back.
Wow.
And I wasn't going to go back. And they, you know, you could see it coming. Lester came on the set when we were shooting, and I said to somebody, David Tomlin, what's he doing here? He said, well, the Salkinds owe him a movie. I said, so? And he said, well, you know, they're just, you know, talking about. And you knew something was in the air. And the fact is, they didn't want to pay Donner. And they, if you look at the Lester cut, where's Marlon Brando?
Jesus, yeah, you're right.
And you know why they cut Brando? And we had already shot all the footage. Brando's footage was all filmed. The first 11 days of the movie were Brando. All of his footage was shot in the first 11 days.
Wow.
For both films.
Wow.
And where's Brando? They cut Brando out because they didn't want to pay him the points. They already paid him to do the movie.
Right.
Brando got $4 million in gold to do Superman.
For 12 days or 11 days. Wow.
And for 11 days work. And I'll tell you a funny story. They were having dinner. They were working probably about 6 days or 7 days. And Spangler and the Salkinds and Richard Donner were all sitting with Brando having dinner. And Marlon said, God, guys, you know, we're working pretty hard on this film and, you know, really working long days. He said, maybe we should take a day off. You know, I'm getting a little tired. And Donner said, well, you know, Marlon, and they're kicking Donner under the table because they couldn't afford to have him take a day off. They needed him on film to get the money from the bank. You understand?
Yeah, I gotcha, yeah.
And they're kicking Donner, and Donner said, well, Marlon, you know, it costs a lot of money to take a day off. And Marlon said, how much is a day's filming costing? And Pierre Spangler jumped up, well, you're talking about $350,000, man. And Brando said, let's take a day off, I'll pay.
Wow. you know,
they almost fell through the table. Of course, they didn't take a day off, but you know
they said,
was Brando. Brando had a great personality. He was terrific.
Let me ask you if this is true. They said that Brando didn't memorize his lines; that he used cue cards. Reeve implied that Brando was lazy. You know, that he mailed it in. Did you see it that way too?
No, I went down on a set one day to watch him work because I loved him. He was, he knew my history of New York, and you know, when he first came on the set the very first day, Mitchum said, "Got to go down and say hello to him and tell him I said hello, and he's dying to meet you." I said, "Brando?" He said, "Yeah." So I went down to Shepperton where we were shooting at the time, and I was standing around, the press were around them all, surrounded. Well, he spotted me and he ran through the press. "Hey, how you doing, kid? I'm dying to meet you." Oh, we're shaking hands and stuff like that. So I went down to see him work one day, and he's got cue cards everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And he did something I never saw anybody else get away with. He got into a shot, and the camera guy said, "Oops, hold on, got a noise. We got to do this again." And, well, we'll come back. And Brando said, like hell you will. And he said, fix that camera. And he turned his back to the camera. And when the guy said, okay, I got it fixed, and he turned back into the shot again.
Wow.
And finished it. I never saw anybody ever do that before. So he came down off the set, and he's sitting down, we're chatting, and I said, I guess a lot of people would be pretty nervous asking you this, but what the hell? What's with the cue cards, man? I said, are you that bored with the industry that you have to have cue cards everywhere? He said, no, Jack, no, it's not at all. He said, I don't want the camera to make it look like I had memorized something. I wanted to make it look like I'm taking the words right out of the air, And I looked at him. I said, you're so full of shit. He's a great Shakespearean actor.
Oh, he's a
And
good,
he
yeah.
sat there and he ripped off like 4 parables of Shakespeare, letter perfect. And he looked at me and he said, that you must know word for word. This stuff, piece of cake.
Wow. That's great. And speaking of Reeve, and you've been asked this question a ton, and this story's been exaggerated from full out fist fight to disagreement. What is the actual story, just once and for all, between you had a confrontation with Reeve? For those people would love to hear this.
People have taken this so out of context.
Oh my gosh, it so has. It's grown, it's mythic now.
There was a restaurant in town, on Beach and Place. And it was an Italian restaurant, the first Italian restaurant in London, in San Lorenzo. And they were good friends of mine. Lorenzo was a good friend. He was really good people. And I ate dinner there every night because I lived at Cadogan Square. So I used to tell people at the studio, man, you got to go in, pumping business for them, And so everybody started going in town to eat at San Lorenzo because the food was incredible. So the Christopher's in there with a whole Hackman, a whole bunch of people, like 12 of them sitting having dinner one night. And I get a phone call from Lorenzo, and he said, Jack, he said, how well do you know this Christopher Reeve kid? I said, what are you talking about? We work together, we're doing a film at Pinewood. He said, well, he's in here talking about your father, about you and the mafia connections you have. And he said, I think he's talking about a lot of things he shouldn't be talking about. And I said, okay. So the next day I went to work in the morning and he was there. And I said, took him into a room by ourselves. I said, come here, I want to talk to you. And I said, man, how well do you know me? He said, well, we work together every day. I said, well, what gives you the right to go into a restaurant and talk all these stories about my father and stuff? Well, I hear you telling stories and people talk about you and all the time. And I said, let me tell you something. Next time you mention my name anywhere, put Mr. in front of it. You ever talk about my family again, son, and your film career is over. And he looked at me and he said, well, but I said, no buts about it. I don't disrespect you. I don't ask you to don't disrespect me. We're working together. It's all well and good, but you have no right talking about things you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's how people get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
So we finished the conversation and we go back out into the hallway, getting ready to go to work. And he starts like he's Superman. You can't talk to me that way, don't you? I said, what? You can't. And so I grabbed him, I threw him against the wall, and I was just getting ready to punch him. And Donner jumped up in my ear and he said, not in the face, Jack, not in the face. And that's exactly what I did. I started laughing. And I dropped him on the floor and I said, boy, kid, you don't know how lucky you are.
Yeah.
And I just walked away. And it was forgotten. It was never, we didn't really talk for a while, but we, eventually started, because you're working with somebody every day for 3 years. My God, you're always going to have an argument. Somebody's got to have an argument somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was a done, over, forgotten thing. And he never did it again. And we started talking, but he was kind of an arrogant kid, He did some things with Jimmy Olsen, Mark McClure that were not nice, saying some things and stuff. But
yeah.
He was first time he ever had that kind of power. You understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
In other words, They could have never fired Donner if Christopher would have stood up and said, "No Donner, no me."
Yeah, that's right. The film, it would have stopped. Yeah, you're right.
He owed that to Donner because Donner created him.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
He should have stood up and said, "No Donner, no me."
Yeah, I never even thought about that.
Never fired him.
Yeah.
And if Donner would have finished 2, he would have done 3, 4, and 5. Because he lived, eats, and slept Superman. He and Mankiewicz both. They loved that project. And he did such... I mean, you ever see the Donner cut?
Yes, of course. 2006, right?
So much better than the Lester cut.
Yep.
And Lester film is not bad because 86% of it was shot by Richard. But Lester had to go back and reshoot stuff because in order for him to put his name on as a director, you had to shoot 50% or better of a film. That's a law in the guild.
Yeah, his editing was terrible too. He was mixing rainy days with sunny days, and
I'll tell you what, in Paris, right?
Yeah.
They go to Paris to shoot the Eiffel Tower. It is pissing down rain, and they went over there like what was the name of the film? As the Annie Oakley film or something. They were trying to sneak into town or something,
right?
Some shit like that. So they go in there, and if you watch that scene. When Margot's talking to the cop, you'll see drops hitting his shirt, and the car behind him, the windshield wipers are going like crazy because it was raining. But all Lester did was opened up the lens that made it look like a sunny day. He went in the laboratory and fixed everything in the lab. Mm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
And then you just, that he could have waited 2 days for the rain to stop and do it properly, but no, he did a lot of things that were very, like, when people say to me, what's the difference between Donner and Lester? I said, one's a movie director, one's a TV director.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. I got 3 last questions for you. Thank you so much for all your time. We talk about Reeve a little bit. I feel like as he got older, looking from the outside, obviously I don't know this, Jack, but I feel like he became a better person, right? And the irony that the man who plays Superman loses his ability to walk in 1995 just makes me question a higher power.
When he got hurt, he became a much better person. That's the gospel truth.
Yeah.
And he and I became closer. Prior to that, he would have appearances and leave people waiting 2 hours and stuff. And you're talking about kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
He was supposed to be somewhere and he'd be late and he did things half-ass and he played the star role too much. But when he got hurt, he became very humble. Mm. And he created a great foundation for, and his wife was unbelievable. She was right there by his side all the time, boy.
Yeah.
And he just became a humble guy. He became very, very different. And very likable. You know?
Yeah, he and Robin Williams very close. You mentioned Margot Kidder earlier. I met her at a Comic-Con a few years back. Seemed like a very kind, very sweet person. We talked for about 5 to 10 minutes. What's your impression of her? Was she great to work on with the set? What's your memory?
I loved Maggie. Maggie was such a talented girl,
Yeah.
And she brought so much life to the set. You know what I mean? She was like Sarah. Sarah was the same way. We had a great cast. Valerie Perrine was we had a lot of fun with Valerie. Valerie was gorgeous, man. You know? And she one day she came down on the set and somebody had took her chair with her name on it, right? So she screams at the top of her lungs, "Who do I have to sleep with?" Well, she didn't say the word sleep. She said,
I gotcha.
Who do I have to get my chair with my own name on it? So I yelled down the line to her, "Same people you did last night, Valerie. Just reversed the order."
Oh no.
She was so. I mean, we had a lot of fun on the set.
Yeah.
Acting was a lot of fun. I mean, we just and when you look at like when we were doing the first Superman 1, then they had all those people guilty. You're talking about some legendary actors, Trevor Howard, Harry Andrews, legendary English actors were doing a cameo role.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. Wow.
There was a great aura in the whole. I mean, Donner created a family aura that was brilliant.
Yeah, and that's why he seems like he's so well liked. And Jack, I can't tell you enough how well you and Terrence Stamp and Sarah Douglas work with each other. You guys are almost like the perfect team. Like I almost would like
a house on fire. I mean, Terrence. You got to understand, Terrence is one of the hottest English actors ever lived.
Oh, amazing! Yeah,
and he was. But you got to understand, he. Excuse me. When he was younger, he was a gorgeous looking kid. My God. But his brother was the manager of The Who.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
And Terrence is hanging out with all these rock and roll people. So it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know?
Yeah.
And he got his feet in too deep. So he wound up going to India and he got Rolfed. I don't know if you understand what Rolfing is.
I do.
Okay, he got Rolfed and he got into this Indian meditation. And they had a hard time finding him. They sent him the telegram to do Superman. You know, he was at one of these media things down in India, and they found him, and he agreed to come back up and do Superman. And he, and he was brilliant. I mean, he was so calm and so relaxed, and we just had a ball.
Yeah,
Terrence is such a good actor, and Sarah was young, you know. She was young, she was beautiful, and she was just her career, but you knew she was going to be a star.
Yeah, and I would have almost liked to see you guys have your own spin-off movie. It would have been so great. My last question to you is this. Are you able to see, Jack, why people love that original Superman and part 2, most of it, 86% of it? Are you able to see why it's such a special movie to so many people? It's a year after the original Star Wars comes out, A New Hope. I feel like both movies are similar in a sense that they hold personal value to people in their hearts. It's nostalgia. It's a time gone by. Are you able to see why it's so special to so many people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we didn't use any CGI.
Right.
We shot VistaVision on VistaVision. Like they're doing this LED on LED today. Well, we did that with Superman 2. You know, we had the flying shots and all were done miraculously. I mean, it was tedious and long, but boy, it worked. My heavens. So, and just the whole camaraderie of everybody. It was just, God, it was such a it was a great experience in my life. Believe me. I mean, I worked with some fantastic people. And I mean, how often you get to work with Hackman and Brando and Terrence all in one film? You understand?
Yeah.
Our director like Donner, oh my God, it was an orgasmic experience. I mean, we had a lot of fun.
Do you have any memorabilia Jack? Do you have any memorabilia from either film at your house?
Yeah, I got a few things, but I'm not a hoarder. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't collect a few more things. I remember I was at a Comic-Con and I signed a pair of boots that we had worn. I think the guy got like $3,000 for the boots or something like that.
Wow.
I said, my God, I could have. So what I do have is, I did that scene where the balls are going back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have that. I have that prop.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
So I got a couple things that I've kept that I'd give to my kids, you know.
Is there anything you want to throw out there, Jack, before I let you go? You've been so kind to me. You're such a good person. Anything you want to throw out there?
Well, we're getting ready to do this great little picture, Red River, which is going to be a super little movie. And we're making a mini series out of my book, Family Legacy, which is going to be a blockbuster. It's going to be very, very good. So we're having a lot of fun. And building the studio is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And putting 4 million square foot and putting everything under one roof for the very first time in the history of the business is going to be a legacy to leave, you know?
Yeah, you are certainly a legend, Jack, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can also connect with Monday Morning Critic on Instagram and Facebook, MDM Critic on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. All episodes available, www.mmcpodcast.com.